Hyvät ystävät, kära vänner, dear friends, you actually stole my beginning because I was planning to say that this is a big homecoming from me. And it's actually, I would say, it's 3 homecomings in one go. The first one is actually the fact that it is actually 33 years ago when I last stood at this stage. Then I actually didn't have to say anything else than shake hand and get my diploma and then go back to actually I went back to the office and started working. So it was actually not that big event in those days. The second homecoming is that I actually moved from Finland in the summer of 1987. And I've still been on that journey and will now in a month actually come home, move back to Finland, and actually feels great. So that's the second homecoming. And the third homecoming is that the bank moves to Finland. The bank moves into the banking union, and I'm extremely proud that this is actually the first truly pan-Nordic, pan-European bank that actually takes a step to move into the banking union. It is the first bank that has ever done it, and actually it is a model also for many Central European banks to do what we have done. We are operating as one bank with 4 home markets in the middle of Europe. So that's the third homecoming that I can actually speak to. What I was and will do is actually I will talk about managing change, leading change. And I will, as was already mentioned, I will talk about it from the perspective of the financial industry, particularly from the perspective of Nordea. But I would also argue that pretty much everything I say is applicable to many, many other businesses, many, many other companies, and many, many other industries. We are all facing tremendous change. So you will hear me say the word change many, many, many times, because I do believe that the speed and the amount of change has never been so high as today. The first thing you always ask a banker is, how does the economy look like? Because usually you think that when you devise strategy, when you devise the way where you're heading, you start with the economy. Is it going up or is it going down? And I have to say that in this world, yes, economy, the markets are very important in terms of how you make decisions. But the reality is those decisions are tactical. They're not strategic. We cannot run and drive the bank or any company based on economic cycles. But yes, of course, tactically we need to take into account how does the underlying economy look like. But there's 2, and I will not actually give my view on the economy, other than say that for the last roughly 8 years, we've actually had the biggest upcycle in modern history. And there are 2 paradoxes with this upcycle. And this is not only Finland, it's Europe, it's globally. That we have had, and we still have, growth that we haven't seen since the financial crisis. Economies are doing well, they're growing, but there is a lot of anxiety. That's a paradox. Usually you say that when you have an upcycle, economies are growing, then you feel good. But if I talk to corporates today, and particularly individuals, and maybe even the broader society, there is anxiety. I'm not going to try to answer that, but it's a paradox. A second paradox that we see is that when you look at markets, which is not the same as economy, markets and asset prices have not been at this level again since the crisis. We should all feel good. Also, the volatility of those asset prices, although they have started to fluctuate a little bit recently, the volatility, and you are all alumni of this school, know that volatility equals risk. i.e. the more volatility, the more risk. The volatility of asset prices have not been this low since the 1960s. So the markets are saying there's no risk. At the same time, and I think you all agree, when you look at geopolitical events, and there are now many indices that actually measure political risk, the volatility of the political risk is probably at an all-time high. That's the second paradox. How can we have low market volatility, i.e. low risk, and at the same time we're actually seeing enormous political risk that could very quickly impact economies, markets, etc. It's a paradox. When I look at really the bigger picture, it's not the economy, it's not the markets. It is actually the big megatrends that we all know about. There's nothing new here. It is about globalization. It is about the demographic change that we see, the aging population. It's the urbanization. And in the middle, of course, it's also the climate change that we see. We are going through a fourth industrial revolution. These are the big shifts that are taking place, impacting companies, industries, and societies. And I would actually argue it's these shifts that are actually creating the anxiety, because we don't really know where this goes. There was somebody actually who I think said very wisely that never before has change happened as fast as is happening today. Still, it will never be as slow again. Just think about those words. Never has change been so rapid. However, it will never be this slow again. That just means that change and the speed and velocity of change will only continue. So then you ask, probably me, okay, how do you run a company, a bank in an environment that I have just described? And I actually describe it with the word VUCA. And if you don't know what VUCA means, it means volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. I think this actually explains well the world we're living in. This was actually an acronym that was coined by the US military when they tried to explain the situation in Afghanistan. We're living in a VUCA world. A world that is changing and a world that is difficult and complex and ambiguous to describe. More specifically, when I look at my industry, which of course is my key focus, I'm running a bank, what are the forces that are changing my industry? What are the forces that I need to take into account when we make, as a management team, strategic decisions? The big change in the financial industry, particularly impacting banks, are really two very big changes that are taking place. One, there's a massive, dramatic change in how we are regulated. Everything from capital, liquidity, funding, but more importantly, everything we do today is regulated, which impacts our processes, our systems, and it impacts our business models in a way that we haven't thought about before. And then, of course, the second one, which is probably part of the fourth industrial revolution, is technology. And when you combine these two forces, we actually have a world where, one, we will have a completely new competitive scene, with new competitors actually entering our industry in a way we have never seen before. So the competitive environment will completely, and is actually completely now changing. And equally important, of course, these are many times interrelated, is that customer expectations and customer behavior is radically changing, not because we are changing, because they are changing in line with what they see in many other industries. So there's a massive, massive shift that is taking place. When you look at the technological changes, I'm not going to go into detail. I would say the biggest ones for our industry right now is mobility. Everything goes mobile. And the second, of course, is the combination of cloud, big data, and artificial intelligence, basically allowing us to handle data in a way we have never been able to do before. Those are the big. The digital revolution, i.e. digital, that's old for banking. We've always been digital. Money has always been ones and zeros. The big shift now taking place is everything goes mobile, and with cloud, artificial intelligence, and big data, we will revolutionize the way finance is being run. And of course, the question for somebody like us is, how do we adapt to that new world? When we look at our customers, and this is true not customers only to the financial industry, it's true to customers of any of you who are running businesses. Customers today are much more impatient and empowered, much more knowledgeable, demanding, and connected. And I think you all agree that if I'm a service provider, however I provide that service, if you do not get, I've just taken one example, if you are, let's say, online net-based, if the response time is any longer than 15 seconds, you will already be moving on to somebody else's service. That just shows the impatient customer that we have. And they do have knowledge, because knowledge is freely available to everybody. When we look at the competitive scene, which I said new competitors are entering our industry, it is, of course, the big technology players are all coming into the banking sector in one way or another. Some only into the periphery of our industry. Some are also coming into the core of our industry. New companies, which they call fintechs, are popping up, frankly, on a daily basis. Last year, more than 25 billion, and sorry, it's billion, real billions, was actually invested into fintechs. 25 billion on an annual basis. Just think about it. And their only purpose is actually to start competing with us. So yes, the competitive scene is changing as well. So what's the response? Because you say, how do I respond to that? If you would ask me, how will banking look like in 5 to 10 years from now? And should I then build this kind of picture that this is the bank that I will build 5 to 10 years from now? I can tell you, one thing is for sure, that picture that I would build would be wrong. So the reality is that I cannot claim that I know how the bank will look like 5, 10 years. I have ideas how it could look like, which is of course important. And that's why it's so important for any industry, for any business, to be number one, more resilience, or more resilient, let's put it that way. So what we are doing is actually we're improving and strengthening the bank so we are more resilient. What does that mean? Of course, that means that we have more capital today than we have ever had before for each piece of business that we have. We have today 3 times more capital on a relative basis than we had in 2007 before the financial crisis. And in 2007, our bank was probably the best capitalized bank in Europe. And today, for the same business, we'll have 3 times more capital. We have the same in liquidity, etc., etc. But it's not only capital. It's systems, it's cybersecurity. And that's why I think resilience is actually key. Because what do you get by being resilient? You get staying power. That means that if you get tougher times, you can get over tougher times. You have staying power. And I have to stand here as a banker to admit that, unfortunately, banks and banking industry has never been resilient. If you think about it, banks have had, hiccups every 20, 25, 30 years. They've gone many times bust. Society has come in and saved them. And you know the history. That is over. That will never happen again, in my mind. Not society should not come and save banks. So resilience is number one. The second thing, what we need to do, is we need to become fast-moving, agile. And I can again stand here as a banker to say, banks have never been agile. Just think about it. We have always decided this is our structure, and you, as consumers, customers, you have to adapt to that because our structures are pretty stale. And it's worked before. But now we need to become much more agile, and that means fast-moving. And that's the strategy. If you are resilient as a company or bank, and you're fast-moving, guess what? You create strategic optionality. And that means also I don't need to know exactly how the world looks 5, 10 years from now, because I can then adapt and change the course. Of course, I have a view where we're heading, but I don't need to exactly know how the world looks like. And I would actually argue in the debate maybe later today when we talk about individuals, I think we as individuals, as potential employees, we need to become more resilient and we need to become more agile because that creates what? Optionality for our future. So I think this is a recipe for pretty much all businesses in the VUCA world, as I call it. So how does a traditional bank, if you think about how did a traditional bank, it really looked like this in the past, right? How does the future bank look like? What are the key elements of a successful future bank? One, it needs to be customer-centric. Banks have always sold products. You will never survive in the future if you sell products that you have designed. You actually need to fulfill needs. I've always said as an example, a mortgage is a product, and we've always had mortgage products. In the future, mortgage is only a way of solving a need people have, and that is to live somewhere, right? And that form of living, how you live and how you finance your living, that may take many, many different forms. So we need to get away from thinking mortgage rather than thinking about, hey, you need to live somewhere and how can I help you doing it? So customer centricity, everything has to start with the customer. The second one is data. I already mentioned that data is the key for most of our businesses. We have more data about our customers than probably anybody. How do we use it in a non-intrusive way to actually give better service to our customers? We need to be much more, as I said, fast-moving. And to be fast-moving, that also means a big shift from what we never did before. That's partnerships. We will not be able to serve and create all the service and service offerings alone. We will much more be partly a platform provider where our services will be combined with external providers. So partnership and partnership capability and how to do that will be a key to our success in the future. We will not be able to do it alone anymore. A completely new way of operating and working. Fourthly, I would say that this industry, as most industries, is about scale. Scale and efficiency. And I've always said that most of the fruits of the change that we see now actually positively will go to the consumer and our clients, which means that we will have to provide the services, the products to our customers at a lower and lower cost. We cannot expect to actually get necessarily more. The benefits will go to the customer. So scale and efficiency are key. And of course, in a world where norms are changing, where laws are being tougher, of course, being agile, but then also being compliant and resilient is key. We've seen too many banks, too many enterprises fall on the compliance side. Compliance is a basically without compliance, you will not be able to operate. It's a license to operate, and the norms are such that you will not have many chance to make mistakes. And I mentioned data once more because I always, in the past, when I talked about what is a bank, I always said bank is really capital, systems, and people. And also, how do you differentiate as a bank? Capital you can buy and rent, we know that. So capital cannot differentiate you long term. Systems everybody can buy. I mean, you just go and buy them. Nobody has necessarily unique systems. So the only thing that make you unique as a bank were your people, and that is still true. And that's why I think the discussion that follows this is important, because our people is the only thing that really distinguishes us long term from our competitors. But there is now a second distinct, unique thing that we have, that's data. Because the data we have is not actually something you can buy, not the kind of data we have. So data, and the one who doesn't actually understand the value of data in our industry will be the dinosaur in our, i.e., not survive. So data is actually a very new element in our industry. This here is a traditional bank. Well, actually, this is the systems of a traditional bank. It's spaghetti. It's a mess. And I have to say that, when I took over this job 3 years ago, that was actually our systems. It was a spaghetti. And maybe banks are quite unique in that our systems are anywhere from 25 to 40 years old. In the world, in a VUCA world, that's not very good. I mean, it's not very good to run a business with systems like this. And I also know when I talk to a lot of corporate clients, they also have a lot of spaghetti. And the spaghetti is not good if you want to be resilient. And spaghetti doesn't work if you want to be agile. So what are we doing, and our response to this, that we are now completely redoing our engine room, the core of the bank. The spaghetti needs to go. That's not without risk, because when you throw out spaghetti, it's anywhere from a 5 to 8 year, and you need to get it right. But if you don't do it, I would also argue that you will not survive. Only by adapting, only by throwing out the spaghetti, can you become resilient and agile. That is part very much at the core of the strategy that we are now pursuing. And we've come a long way on that. So the way we will then operate is that if you have a core which is simple, resilient, and modern, then we can have a bank that has omnichannels, be it digital, personal, through mobile, through laptop, through computer, an omnichannel offering to our customers. That is the only way we can do, and be truly front to back digital. It's a big shift, but to me it is the only way we can compete long term against the big tech, the fintechs, and who knows, many other entrants are also coming. In this region, Nordic region, you have at least one, if not more, airlines coming into the banking industry. And you may have other players as well. So it is a changing. Then you may ask me at the end, how hard is this? I talked a lot about systems. I talked about technology. I talked about shift, competing against fintechs and competing against the big tech companies. My biggest challenge is actually the cultural transformation of the bank. It's not actually the systems. Again, I said, I can buy systems. If I don't have capital, which I do actually have plentiful, being probably one of the strongest capitalized bank in Europe, I have capital, I can buy systems, Technology is available. The big differentiator here is, can I change the culture? A bank that has been run in silos, a bank that has had hierarchies, and the banks which have been very slow moving. The cultural change is actually the big shift that we are doing. And that means also that we need to have a clear North Star for our people to say, what kind of a bank do we want to be? And we have set a very clear target, not only a target, an ambition, that we want to be a bank that is easy to deal with, is anywhere, anytime. Doesn't matter where you are and what channels you want to do. Anywhere, anytime you can do your banking. And easy to deal with, relevant, competent, where you have the digital and the personal in balance. And of course, you need to be safe and trusted. I can stand here today and say, do I fulfill all those today? No, I don't. I may not always be easy to deal with. I'm certainly not anywhere, anytime, but I'm getting there. I am actually getting there. I become more and more anywhere, anytime. In Sweden, we have 40% soon of all our meetings, customer meetings, actually online. Online, where you can actually book the meeting on your mobile and actually have it with your mobile. Then it is anywhere, anytime. You can do it Saturday morning when you're sitting at your cottage, for example. But this is actually what is needed. It's the cultural change and changing people. And I think I want to finish there, because this topic of people and how people fit in here into this big changing world is actually the key, not only to the success of this bank, this industry, but I would also argue it's the key to the success of the society more broadly. So with that, I thank you for listening. And I don't know when we start the panel, but I'm sure I can take any questions if anybody has any. And I hope you now understand the challenges and the way we are addressing those challenges in our industry, and particularly at Nordea. Technology center, no. I mean, I think it's very clear that, first of all, we will not have technology centers in only one place. No company can, and no bank will have it. But we will have, I think today when we look at how we develop digital, we have 3 hubs, really digital and technology hubs. That's Finland. And it's not only one place in Finland. It's in Oulu, Tampere, and here in Helsinki. Then we have Denmark, and then we have Poland. That doesn't mean that we don't develop technology in other countries, but those are really the 3 hubs. Of course, we use India and others, but these are the 3 hubs: Finland, Sweden, and Poland. And you cannot have one place, not only because it's a risk question, but we don't get the talent. The talent pool in a single country is way too small for a company of our size. Mä sanoisin näin, että me ollaan siinä mielessä tänä päivänä 10 vuotta on tietenkin pitkä aikajana, että kun me ollaan yleispankki, voi sanoa näin, niin mä en tykkää sanasta yleispankki, koska silloin on just näin, että jos sä oot investointipankki siellä ja sitä täällä. Me ollaan erittäin integroitu pankki. Meillä on nämä 4 sanotaan aluetta, eli nimenomaan wealth, kotitaloudet, suuryritykset ja PK- ja keskisuuret yritykset. Ja kaikki se, mitä me tehdään, on synergia toisten kanssa. Koska meidän asset management esimerkiksi, sen suurin jakelukanava on meidän household business. Meidän markets business, joka on suurasiakkaille, tekee paljon töitä meidän asset managementin kanssa, mutta myös PK-sektorin kanssa. Ja sen takia se strategia on meille niin tärkeä, mikä me nyt ollaan, että me ollaan hyvin fokusoitunut, me ollaan pohjoismainen pankki, me ollaan myyty Puola, Baltia on eräällä tavalla jo pistetty sivuun, Venäjä on ajettu alas, Luxemburg myyty. Me olemme pohjoismainen pankki, ja nämä alueet, niillä on suuret synergiat sekä maan sisällä että maiden välillä. Ja on tärkeää, että me ollaan niillä alueilla, missä me toimitaan, me ollaan jo tänä päivänä johtava kaikissa niissä bisneksissä ja jokaisessa maassa, missä me toimitaan, koska tämä on skaala-business. Ne, jotka hajottaa tämän nimenomaan, että tekee jos et ole globaali, niin mä en usko, että pärjää. Sen takia me ollaan hyvin integroitu pankki, ja mä näen ainakin seuraavat 5 vuotta, tämä ei tule muuttumaan.
Annetaan Kasperille iso käsi.